Hey, everybody. Let's get that light going there. How's everybody doing today? I got a story. I hope, I hope I really give a lot of praise to uh, the veterans that served our country. They should be recognized on all levels. And when you see one that's wearing a Vietnam hat or different wars, thank them for their service, okay? You run around America, some hate our country. I don't want to get too nuts about it, but if you don't like America, get the hell out. Get out. Find somewhere else that you can rock and roll like you think you should, okay? Forget about politics and all that. We're still living in America. So I see these war hero stories on YouTube that were true American heroes, and then I see these wimp clowns, and I don't want to use too many expletives, and these wimps that want to talk smack about America, and they don't even begin to realize or could never even fathom what these veterans and heroes went through. So get off your video games and quit crying and talking smack about America. Okay? You're wimps. You 20s to 30 somethings, you're wimps. You're little crybabies. Your mothers are still changing your diaper. You're 20 years old. All right? Did I make my point? Come on, my people. Come on and have a cup of coffee with me. Hey, I'm up to 63 subscribers. We'll have that 100. And we'll have a big coffee party, all right? Hey, Leon, how's it going? Yep. Oh, yeah. I really like to recognize the vets. And there's a Green Beret named David Christiansen. I mean, not David, David Christian. I do a spiritual Christian channel also, and the story just happens to be David Christian. And I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to copyright probably. I'm going to probably copyright infringe also, and they're going to slap my hand, but I don't know if it'll get through or not. But it was an interview that David Hoffman conducted on a true American patriot, proud American who saw his uncles and father go to the World War II. He came up with American Pie, Chevrolet, innocent mid-50s America. Then he got called to war during an innocent time, and he got called to war, and he served like a mofo. I mean, he got shot 9 times. He was a Green Beret. I mean, these guys were nasty, just heroes. Rambo, they made that Rambo movie. That's all Hollywood bullcrap. These dudes weren't even Rambos. It'd be insulting to call them Rambos. They were above that Hollywood. Sylvester Stallone, my name is Rambo. Come on, Herb, get it together. These were real, true blue, way above their Rambo and everything. Come on. So I'm going to try to show this video. I'm going to have to turn the camera like this, just like my other video got taken down, because I'm probably piggybacking and copyrighting, infringing on this cat right here, David Hoffman. But hey, David, if you're out there, let me use your video, okay, bro? Don't be a Scrooge. But this David Hoffman, he does good interviews. He does good interviews on different stuff. Cool dude. He's on PBS, and he does great documentaries. I wish I could be half of what his talent. I'll get there though and surpass him. You guys all know that. Be confident, my viewers. Be confident. So I'm gonna try to do this and just see what happens. And excuse me. So this is the story of David Christian, and this guy is unbelievable. You know, I mean, is there any patriotism left in America other than the media bashing, people talking smack? I had two brothers that served in the military, grandfather, great uncles, and my brother did a career and everything. These are real men. These are real men. And I give just as much respect to the guy that takes a bus to the factory and puts in 60 hours to feed his family. These are men. I wish I could be half the men these guys were. I'll admit it. I wish I could be these kind of men someday. At 59, I don't know, might be too late. Might be too late, but I'm trying. So let's see what happens here. Just hang in there with me, folks, and I might be able to upload it to my channel, and it might go right on the director's floor. All right, let's see what this guy's talking about.
Because I know them as I do, that David Christian and Bill Earhart would be colleagues, respectful of each other, respectful of the different points of view. They both fought in that war. They both had strong feelings about it and about the America that they returned to.
To understand where we're going with this conversation in terms of the Vietnam experience and so forth, I want to understand something about what you grew up in. What shaped your attitudes? Were you raised to be a patriot? What were you raised on?
Well, in the early 50s, the girls with the ponytails and the boys with their ties and their white shirts going off to their little schools, even public schools, with the Pledge of Allegiance and your prayer before your day. I mean, it was a different time in America. So there was a great deal of symbolism and patriotism and that whole nine yards there. You have to remember, our fathers just fought the greatest war in the history of mankind, a world at war, World War II. They were victorious. Their allies were victorious. I mean, the Canadians, the English, the French, everybody was victorious. Euphoria in the world. And it was that we could have anything we wanted. We were told that we could have anything we wanted. So as we grew up, pulling ponytails and enjoying all the fun of life, so to speak, there was no danger. We never thought of any danger. We could have anything we wanted to have. Anything we worked for was ours. Jobs and opportunities and fun. And so it was a steel town I grew up in. There were jobs in steel mills. America ruled the world with steel. There were no steel mills in Germany. There were no steel mills in Japan. There's no steel mills in Korea. There was no competition for America. All the jobs were in America. All our fathers and our mothers, if they chose, had jobs. There was opportunity there. There was money there. My mother and father met in the South Pacific in World War II.
All right, I got to figure something out because my arms are getting tired already. I'm starting to sweat, but let me brace my elbow or something. And so he's just talking about, plus I probably should stop it because it might save the copyright infringement. So if you stop it and go, it might stop the copyright problem. So I've noticed that little trick on other channels. So maybe that'll stop it. But my arm is getting tired, so I'm going to brace my hand like this. Okay. And let's see what we can do here. Bear with me, folks. It's hard being producer, director, and creator, and comedian, and preacher. All right, let's get it.
Mother served MacArthur on MacArthur's staff. And my father was a courageous typewriter repairman, and he fixed my mother's typewriter. And it was a James Michener type setting. It was a love setting in the South Pacific. He became a Catholic so that he could drink without having a guilty conscience. He was a Southern Baptist, and he was from Florida. My mother, after World War II, moved to Florida. I was born in Gainesville, Florida. My father's drinking problem became acute. She moved him to Pennsylvania, thinking that would cure his drinking problem. Unfortunately, it became magnified. He left my mother when I was 7 years old. And my mother raised 4 children by herself. Now, you have to remember, this is the 50s. In the early 50s, having a single woman raise children by herself was taboo. So the state social workers all of a sudden invaded our house. So it was the first time in my life that I realized big brother, big sister ruled your life. And it changed me. It changed me in the sense that I became an adult at a very young age. I had to talk to the social workers and tell them that my mother was somebody, that we got $67 a month that we paid our mortgage with. Our total of $83 a month was our total stipend from the state. And out of that, what did my mother do with the difference between $67 and $83? What did she spend her money on? Then they would ask me if my mother dated, and I had to defend my mother. So my first thing in life was to keep the children together. We had 4 children, and they thought that the problem was my mother had 4 children, take the children away from the woman, and therefore she'll be okay. My mother went on to die when I was 18 years of age. She was 44. Here she was, a courageous veteran, a decorated veteran, who served on MacArthur's staff, and she died poor. That formulated.
That shows you the mother, women that served in those wars in various capacities, and then they come back, and the government kind of give them the old brush off and stuff like that. It happened, and I'm not trying to bash. I still love our country, but it just, that kind of stuff happens, and how does it make these people feel thereafter?
Who David Christian is. My mother gave me my strength. My mother gave me my outlook on life, and she talked about opportunity.
Your home or your community about communism?
Nobody knew about communism. You have to realize that everyone's fathers went off to fight all the isms of the world, fascism, the Japanese, and we fought every ism that you could think of. And so when it was my turn to go off and fight communism, and we fought it. I mean, our neighborhood wasn't swept up with the McCarthy era of the 50s. Our neighborhood wasn't swept up with anything. We were swept up with paying our bills. We were swept up with working. And we were swept up with, if your country called you, it was a great, great honor to serve your country. Great honor to put on a uniform. I mean, that's what I looked at. I looked at the day when someday I'd wear the uniform of the United States government and I'd serve in the military. That's what I looked for. You have to realize everyone's parents did the same thing. They served in the big war. When they got together for social functions, they talked about World War II. They talked about New Guinea. They talked about Anzio. They talked about the ship battles. And this is our uncles, and this is our fathers, or whomever's there. Our mother, my mother, talking about the different things. My mother's biggest pain was she couldn't join the VFW because she was a woman. And they wouldn't accept her, and yet she was overseas. And I remember things like that, but we weren't talking about the isms, fascism or imperialism or any of those things, or communism. And I tell you the truth, I didn't know about the isms when I was over there. So, I mean, I'm quite honest with you. It was a fun time, but it was also a painful time. America wasn't just all peaches and cream. There was a lot of rough knee scraping going through the 50s, going through the 60s, into the 70s. Tough times. I remember the problems of democracy teacher. He came into the classroom and he was all upset that there was a coup in South Vietnam. And this gentleman was killed and there's a change in government. And we looked at each other and I said, where the hell's South Vietnam? You got to be kidding me. A coup, who cares? Who would ever in our wildest dreams think that a few years later that I would be leading men into battle in South Vietnam? I didn't even know where it was. Everything was rah-rah, go get him, charge. Walter Cronkite was on television, 1965. My brother was in uniform. Let's kill the commies, kill a commie for mommy. Let's go get him, guys. Everybody was charged. Locked to the TV sets. America's going to win. 3 years later, Walter Cronkite comes on television after Tet Offensive. And then he says, in the 1960s, we got to stop. It's wrong. It's bad. Time out. How do you say time out to a whole nation? The nation has already committed thousands of people. People are already maimed. People are already killed. That's what the 60s all of a sudden changed me. The 60s, all of a sudden, the leaders, the fathers.
1 second, folks. There you go, a testimony about the media back then. 3 networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. First, it was rah, 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 go America, go America, go America. Because believe it, these networks were politicized. Coming out of World War II, the great American heroes, blah, 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 a great time. Then right into Vietnam. And Walter Cronkite and the other newscasters, go, yeah. And then the political aspect came into the networks and said, oh, now we got to portray this. They used the networks as a pawn to start, painting the picture that they want. And America is very impressionable at that time, and still today, which is sad, by the garbage that is spewed on these news channels. Some are legitimate, some are just whacked out. And these Americans are sucker little non-thinkers that can't think for themselves, and they think everything that comes out of Walter Cronkite's mouth or anybody else's is fact. And my viewers and people here, we know we're not robots. We know we're not robots. So I just wanted to, let's get back to the show.
The political fathers who said that we trusted in World War II, and now we're trusting in Vietnam. Go off and fight communism. And we fought just as gallantly as anybody fought in
Hell
China
yeah.
or any other place. Normandy, Revolutionary War, we fought just as hard as all those guys.
Real men.
And now all of a sudden they're saying, time out, don't fight, be on defense.
Yeah,
it's not a war. They didn't even call it a war. It was a police action. We went from a police action to an era. Today, some historians are calling it a war. But back then, there was a lot of games being played. And they were being played with the patriots of America, the people that paid taxes. The people who served in World War II are being asked to give the most important resource they had, their children,
Mark.
mainly their sons. Give that resource to go fight. If you're going to fight, you got to fight to win. There's no second place in war. And that's what happened. All of a sudden, there was this confusion. Everything was indecision. You either commit. If you're going to commit, one thing I learned from Vietnam, don't ever again commit young boys to a war before the nation's committed. Because what happens when they return from the war, the nation's not going to be committed to those young boys. And that's what happened in Vietnam. That's what happened in the 60s. They came back lost. They came back heroes in battle, and they came back lost in the concrete jungles of America. The building in the early 60s, the late 50s and early 60s, America was caught up in a hysteria building bomb shelters in their backyard. So, you're talking about a generation of kids today say, because they're mostly led on by their teachers, say, gee, are you afraid of a nuclear bomb? Kids don't know what the hell they're talking about, but the teacher says, are you afraid of this? The kids, oh yeah, it's my biggest fear. The kid's not afraid of the nuclear bomb. I didn't know a nuclear bomb myself. We're dropping atom bombs. And we're building bomb shelters in our backyard. America, throughout my little town of Levittown, 17,000 homes. People, we would go and watch them construct bomb shelters, store food, air ventilation for the atomic radiation. So you want to talk about a little bit of neurosis, a little bit of being psychotic. Here's a nation building bomb shelters for the big one, because the big bomb was a reality. It just dropped, and we kept hearing about it.
Those bomb shelters were being built, and people were, teachers were having you hide under your desk and cover your head, things like that. Were you scared? Do you remember?
I wasn't scared. It was fun to us. We didn't think of it as fear. You're young children. Fear is almost taught to you at times. We used to have to go out. You didn't hide under your desk because you had a big glass there. Everyone had to go out in the hallway, and then you had to put your head between your legs and pull your head down between your legs there, and put your arms overhead and stay away from glass. And all the doors were closed. We had the air raid signals, and all that was played during the 60s. And to us, it was kind of, it was amusing. I mean, I was only a little boy. I'd pinch the kid next to me, or, you'd do things. It got us out of math. What, are you kidding me? That getting out of math was much more important. I would go out and sit in the hallway today to get out of math. So in the 60s, I was just a normal little boy, and with normal little girls, and we got out of class and we got to socialize, and it was fun. Then we came back in afterwards. There was no fear. I mean, I didn't have a fear of the big bomb because I lived in the United States of America. There was never going to be any big bomb here.
Talk to me.
My parents helped put out the fires of the world wars and the fires of burning in America, or burning across the world, rather. America was a haven for fun.
When did the first glimmers of thought come in that you were actually going to be heading over there?
Never.
That's what ever gave you pause?
Never, ever, ever. I thought I was too bright. I'm too smart to go to Vietnam. Why do they want to send a guy like me to Vietnam? I mean, my brother's there. He likes it. God love him. I'm smart enough. I keep reading the newspapers. I mean, there's a real war going on over there, guys. Some people get hurt in car accidents. Some people get hurt in wars. I don't want to be in either or. I kept going to schools. I went to the Pentagon. I said, "Ich sprechen Sie Deutsch? Ich sprechen Sie Deutsch, aber nicht so gut." They said, "Oh, you speak German." I said, "Yes, yes. Send me to Germany." And this major, he called this guy over and said, "Come here. Do it again, Lieutenant." So I said again that I speak German, but not so very good. They shook my hand and said, "Congratulations. Hopefully you'll find a German colony in Vietnam." I mean, I never thought I was going to Vietnam. I thought I was going to Tahiti. I put in for Tahiti to be a liaison. I put in every place in the world. Me in Vietnam, I just didn't figure they were going to send me there. After I got there, it became real. After I got there, then I started getting serious. I said, "Dave, this is real serious. I'm laying in bed. I'm hearing these guns are firing out. I don't know if they're firing them in or firing them out. I mean, the whole ground shaking. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom." I'm saying, "Gee, this is real serious, Dave." And I went over to the officers club. I never forget this. I walked over to the officers club. I was 18 years old. I was the youngest commissioned military officer in the Vietnam War. And I walked over there. And the only reason I was the youngest commissioned officer because a lot of other people figured out a way how to stay out of it. My ways didn't work. So here I am sitting in the officers club. And this guy's sitting there, and he's got a rifle on his chest with a ribbon around it. It's a combat infantryman's badge. For those that fight on the battlefield, that means something very significant. It means you've been under enemy fire for 30 days. And I remember chatting with this fella, and I said, "What do you do? What do you do?" And he said, "Well, look, you should have a beer and, drink blackberry brandy with it. That's good for you. And, and relax and just listen to the guns going off." I'm thinking, "Gee, this is a lucky year I have." So I said, "What do you do in terms of battle? What type of battle are you into?" So I don't do battle. So, this is my kind of guy. I need to talk to him. And I had been trained to be a Green Beret. I'd been trained to do everything that meant fighting. So I was an infantry officer. I was a paratrooper. But I also thought I was charming in my own way, that I should be something else. It's good to have all this training, but to actually get in the ring's another story. It's real serious. He told me he was an escort officer, and he escorted civilian personalities around with Bob Hope, the Gold Diggers, Anne Margaret, all personalities of the 60s. So he pulls out all these pictures, and I see all these pictures of all these people that I think are just wonderful. And I said, that's my kind of job. That's what I got to do. How do I get a job like this? And I'm in admiration of this fella. He said, "You got to get out there and you got to kick ass and take names. Now you get out into combat and win the battles." By then, I'd had my baptism in battle. By then, I wanted to come back to America, and I wanted to bring anybody that was associated with me back to America. I didn't care about the isms over there either. I couldn't tell you what ideology meant. I'll be quite candid with you. I was a teenager who just graduated high school when he was 7. I was making decisions not whether they're going to be hired or fired, whether they're going to live or die. I could call in the United States Air Force for bombs. I could call in artillery. I could rain steel from the heavens. I could call in helicopters. That's an awful lot of responsibility for an 18-year-old man. That was the 60s for me. 1968, the height of the Vietnam War. We did an awful lot, and we fought as hard as we could. And unfortunately, I got shot up quite a bit. So that ended my military career. So
I'm I'm missing a small piece of the story, which is how you got from high school into that, and the motivation from high school into the Army, and the motivation to do that. Did you do it voluntarily? Did you believe you were doing the right thing for your country?
No one thinks of the macro. You think, let's be quite candid and personally think of yourself. You're doing the right thing for yourself. The 60s children were caught up in going to college. You had to go to college. If you didn't go to college, you were a social failure. I joined the service. It was September 6, 1966. Vietnam was just picking up. My brother was already there. He was telling me all kinds of wonderful stories, that it's tropical and you get all the food you want to eat. I liked food. You get free clothes. And it was a nice environment. So did all the majority of the people that served in the military during the Vietnam War years enlisted. And did they enlist thinking they were going to get hurt? I never thought I was going to get hurt. I never thought I was going to be injured. Never thought any of those things. My military career ended. I was shot in the back, both legs. I was stabbed in the left arm.
Yep.
I'd lost the use of this hand that I wanted to be a carpenter with for 6 months. I had a piece of shrapnel sever the ulnar nerve in this hand. I had 40% of my body second, third degree napalm burns. I was told I was a war hero. I was told I couldn't be a carpenter. I was told I really now had to go to college. And that scared me. It really did. I was scared of society for a short period of time because I didn't know what my worth was. It was still the 60s. And then I was watching the 60s unravel, the nation unravel on television. And I watched it from a hospital bed. And all of a sudden, I watched a group of people swell. And most people are followers. They're not leaders. Most people follow a movement because it's something neat.
Robots.
Go to it, whether it's a beer party at the beach or whether it's a demonstration. And I believed in certain things. And I remember I went up to Columbia University and they blew up a statue outside a low library. I went to Princeton. They were having their first moratorium day. And I went to Villanova and I decided I'd go to Villanova University. I liked the campus. And so about 20 of us vets all went over to Villanova. And we plugged into Villanova University. And we didn't want the demonstrations and everything else. And certain things meant a whole lot to us. The American flag. I saw men die in the battlefield for the American flag. So I took flags off the demonstrators, demonstrate with something else. I mean, that would really, really hurt me, them taking the flag. Why do they have to hurt someone else? There's something else, some other symbol they can use. Should I burn the Torah? Should I burn and hurt someone's Bible?
Terrible.
Then why should someone burn my flag? And I would get very upset. Don't touch the flag. Don't touch it in front of me unless you want to get hurt. And I'll be quite candid with you.
Hell yeah.
The politicians sold us out in Vietnam.
Yep.
The politicians sold us out back here. During the 60s, it was a political game. The politician went the flow of the crowd. They were not leaders also. They joined the social movements. They joined all of a sudden when you had McCarthy out there in Chicago and you had the revolutions going on in the streets. The politicians didn't know how to lead, what was going on. So they were just as confused. Instead of making a stand for something, showing leadership, they were trying to go with the flow. And as a result, it just led to the confusion. The 60s, people say it was so wonderful. I hate to tell you, there's a lot of mass hysteria. There's a lot of confusion in the 60s, a lot of pain associated with the 60s. And people just naturally have a tendency to block that pain out. Let's block out being locked up for a night. A lot of people were locked up trying to make their point. So, I say there's a lot of ways the folks that were in charge here, I learned from Vietnam that you can't win a war in defense. We played war in defense. You can't win a baseball game or a football game in defense. You can't win in politics in defense. You have to take some offensive moves. You have to do certain things that, you're not going to win everybody's hearts and minds back here in America. And we learned that in Vietnam. You're not going to win everybody's hearts and minds. You got to make some bold decisions. Politicians weren't ready for those bold decisions. Politicians were going the flow of the anti-everything crowd, and that's what it became. They were anti-everyone and everything.
You're in Vietnam. What do you understand about what's happening in America? Do you know what's going on in America, and how do you feel about it?
I was hurt. I thought the folks back here in the demonstrations carrying on didn't understand us. When we were fighting as gallant Americans. we wanted someone support. The conservative right-wing people weren't supporting us because we were losing the war. The liberal left-wing people weren't supporting us because we were in a war. And then the folks in the middle, they were all going off to the baseball games, drinking their beer and enjoying their families. Unless their family was there, they didn't care. No one gave a damn. So it was a lost war. It was lost in many, many ways. Here we are in a strange land, a foreign soil, fighting the enemy, killing the enemy, asked to do things above and beyond the call of most teenagers. After your high school prom, you go off to Vietnam and you kill people. Now, that was very, very commendable because you were doing it for heroics and you were doing it to defeat the enemy. I felt we could win. I felt the guys back here were hurting us. We used to always say, send those folks over. They should be here on the front lines with us. Give a peace symbol to the enemy, and it'll blow your hand off. You show the enemy the peace symbol. I was very upset with that whole movement. I think it played into Ho Chi Minh's hands. I think it played into the enemy's hands. I think it prolonged the war. Didn't end the war. It prolonged the war. As far as I was concerned, got more people killed. As far as I was concerned.
What was the talk among you and your cronies over there? You and your friends, the ones you were fighting with. What was your attitude towards these people? Do you remember it, or was this just your personal view?
No, I remember it vividly. We wanted them next to us. We wanted those folks. Now, we thought we were fighting for America. We didn't think communism was a great thing. If you didn't know about communism, once you started thinking about it and listening about it, reflecting back as you were there and started talking amongst each other, well, if communism is not bad, we'd say to each other, because we'd say, what are we fighting? Is it good and evil? What are we fighting here? So we're fighting communism. Well, communism's not bad, some guys would say. And so, if it's not bad, why are people being killed trying to get out of Berlin? Why are people being killed trying to get over the wall? I remember Kennedy saying that. Now, it's not me saying that. You guys remember the same thing. And we were all in extended adolescence fighting a war. We were trying to rationalize it because we weren't taught in any school what was right and what was wrong in terms of the enemy here. We weren't taught the process of dissecting capitalism or communism. So as we were looking at it, we thought what we were doing was right. Then we personalized the war very much so, and we got hurt. We really felt hurt by the protesters, demonstrators.
All right. Let's see where we're at here. 26 minutes. I'm sweating, trying to hold this camera up, but we're going to do it. Thank you for the comments in there. And, you more or less see the right wingers, left wingers, Americans, they're all speaking out of both sides of their mouth. And at the end of the day, you got these soldiers that were called into battle right out of high school, right from their prom to Vietnam, not really having any idea of what is going on. They knew that their elders were heroes in World War I, World War II, and everything else. And now these young boys were called into battle, not really knowing. It was just a political football, and they were brave to go and engage and come out of it. And then what he talks about later, when he comes back to America, go hand out those peace signs to the Viet Cong and get your hand blown off. These little pearly white little wimps running around trying to cast judgment on these heroes that were teenagers. They were just armchair people making judgments and being, the politicians weren't leaders. There was nobody leading. They were only it wasn't a war. Vietnam wasn't a war. Americans just played on defense. In any competition, you have to demonstrate an offense. They're sitting back, and then you can only defend yourself. You can't get on the walkie-talkie and call in the bombers to decimate these people because they're getting orders from Washington not to. So what are these soldiers supposed to do in the trenches? What would you do, folks? Sit there and go, geez, the people back home are pissed off. I just watched my buddy get his head blown off. I'm just going to sit here, chill out until the war is over. No, you better bulk up and start throwing down. But when you could start throwing down, you could only fight with one hand, so to speak. So let's continue. My arm's getting a little tired, folks. I'm sweating. But I don't care how many views this video gets or whatever. I'm doing it all the way through, whether it's chopped up or whatever, because I owe it to this guy. This guy right here, I owe it to. David Christian. I owe it to this guy. And I'm sweating like a mofo. Let's go.
Protesters and demonstrators, I'll tell you this. Not one time in one demonstration when I came back to the United States of America did any one of them ever speak up for a Vietnam veteran. Not one time. And those on the right and those on the left demonstrating for the war, against the war, they let us alone by ourselves. We were lost. We were puppy dogs. And we had to come together, and we had to form our own leadership, create our own veterans organizations, because the other people left us alone. So the anti-everything group, they stayed anti-everything, and they never picked up the banner and the cause for the Vietnam veterans. No way, shape, or form. Would they use us? Yeah, they wanted me out there to lead a crowd to be a Vietnam veterans against the war. I wouldn't do it. No way. I believe certain things were right.
Yes, Mark, Jojo, in World War II, we all went out to win. As soon as we had the bomb, we used it. During Vietnam, they couldn't. Yes, you're saying it right now. Yeah, you want to throw down in battle, folks? Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, bam. Game over. War over. Go home. That's a wrap. We had it. We're a strong, powerful nation, and a war gets politicized, and they're sending body bags back. I have a close personal friend that was in Vietnam War, and he's very intelligent. He rose up like this guy. I think I did another video about it, and it's sad. And yeah, he still has PSTD. He's probably 70s, in his 70s. Good man. And you see the collateral damage of these Vietnam vets as they're 60 and 70. They got wronged. Go out and be a hero and risk your life and then get crapped upon. How's that digest in a person's soul, in their mind, in their psychology? They all had the PSTD, the post-stress, but damn. Food for thought. So, and this guy is a very eloquent speaker, good-looking cat, telling his story, putting it down beautifully. He was he went at 17, the youngest. So, let's continue, my good friends.
I believe I helped a lot of people in Vietnam. I believe I saved some of our allies' lives in Vietnam. All the movies and everything else that people show years and years later, I'm telling you, Americans were extremely patriotic. They're extremely good. Sure, there were the exceptions. But for the most part, the guys there fought and believed what they were doing right. They felt that people back home were selling them out. And I feel to this very day that Jane Fonda was the biggest traitor to this nation.
Yes.
You think that didn't hurt on the battlefield? Hearing a movie star just because she's a rich woman, comes from a rich family. I came from a humble family, and she's talking with Hanoi Hannah, and our boys are hearing this in the foxholes, and she's not punished? Is there confusion? And she goes on to make more millions?
Thanks, Mark.
Is there confusion? Yeah, there's confusion amongst the minds of those fighting. And who's for us? Who's backing us? Why are we here? What's going on? You can't carry a rifle into Saigon. You can't shoot the enemy till the enemy shoots you. I mean, let's cut the BS. We either fight a war to win, or let's pull us out.
Mm-hmm.
I said it to the New York Times. I got in trouble by the Army. I'm a war hero on the one hand, the other hand, I'm being sequestered. I can't speak to the media. Because if I speak to the media, I tell the truth. And the truth is, yes, we could win the war. Or let's pull out. Fight the war to win or get out. I don't want to get into any political rumbles, or I don't want to get into any anti-war movement. Sometimes, I tell you this very clearly, in a macro concept, people just don't get along. Neighbors don't get along. Pick up your newspaper. You'll find a neighbor hurting another neighbor for a boundary dispute. It just happens. So when you get to a situation where there's nations agreeing or disagreeing, and when you get to war, that's the ultimate breakdown. Negotiations are over. Not only were we upset with the peaceniks back here, we were upset with the people that were debating over the size and shape. How'd you like to be laying in the battlefield, fighting the enemy, fighting for your life, watching your blood drop from your body onto foreign soil, and then hearing that people won't sit down at a peace table because of the shape of the peace table? They had to argue whether it was going to be square, circular, or rectangular. What's going on?
Wow.
Sit on the damn floor and talk about peace. We don't care. Let's have peace. That's what we wanted. We wanted peace. The veterans wanted peace as much as anybody else. We didn't want to be manipulated.
I want to know what it was like coming home. Take me back to when you got back to this country. What happened?
I came home on a stretcher. Came back to America.
There you go.
Still a proud patriotic American. My wife got real upset with me. She was very much against the war. I was married when I was 18. I'm still married to the same woman, and a wonderful woman. And I put her through a lot of hell. And I remember her getting upset with me because I said I would go back to Vietnam tomorrow. And I would go back. And I would go back and I'd fight because I understand much better today communism. I understand much better today. I mean, millions of people aren't drowning and being killed in Cambodia and drowning trying to get away from Vietnam. It's so wonderful. So there's certain things that are breaking down. But way back then, I would have went back. And what I would have went back for was for my friends. Plus, I went back for a little peace of mind. Combat in Vietnam was a lot easier than coming home.
Wow.
Being on the battlefield was much more understandable. You knew who the enemy was. You fought the enemy. Much simpler. When you came home, it was very, very, very confusing. It was painful. I mean, even my wife questioned, why fight the system? Why am I picked to fight the system? And I saw how I was fighting the system, and the system was turning on me.
Wow.
Here I was supposedly a war hero. Here I was supposedly a guy who had some brains. Here I was supposedly a person who, in any other war, in any other time, would be said, thank you. And here I saw that I had to fight. United States Army. From the United States Army to the politicians, to the people in the street. The veterans organizations did not embrace the traditional organizations of the Vietnam veterans. I saw we had to form our own group. The right and the left did not embrace the Vietnam veterans. So we organized, just like the blacks and the Hispanics and every other social movement that came out of the 60s. We organized our movement. And we became the Vietnam Veterans of America, and we started taking names. Names of politicians that were for us, names of politicians that were against us.
Yep.
And we started working. We started becoming politically active. We worked extremely hard. And we did a whole lot. We got a GI Bill passed. Originally, Vietnam veterans didn't have a GI Bill. So we got a GI Bill passed. We got recognition. There was no Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There was no Vietnam Veterans Memorial. There was nothing for Vietnam veterans. You went, you served, you came home, go get a job. Oh, you can't get a job? Vietnam veterans have the highest unemployment rate? Why do they have the highest unemployment rate? Because everybody who stayed back here, who's drawing the decisions and the conclusions, they're not hiring. Who wants to hire a guy who was off in war? The right wing doesn't want to hire him. The left wing doesn't want to hire him. The middle road doesn't give a damn. So now all of a sudden, the Vietnam veterans have the highest unemployment rate in the nation. So then you have presidents coming on saying they're going to do this for Vietnam veterans, they're going to do that. How would you like to go to class? As my buddy went to class, and the teacher said, can you speak any languages? And he said, yeah, I speak Vietnamese. And the whole class breaks out laughing.
Wow.
Those things may not seem like
Punks.
much today.
Punks.
Years later.
Punks.
But in the late 1960s, that was a pain because the same kids who were laughing were the same kids who were in the hallways you were sitting next to for security to protect yourself against something that would be foreign and alien that could harm you. Now you're being harmed emotionally. So why was it more secure to be in Vietnam? Because everybody there was on your side and we were pulling together. We were a team. We were units. We were damn proud.
When you came home, Can you talk to me about that? What happened when you went to Princeton? It's an isolated story, but I think it's a good story.
Princeton, the first moratorium day, it was in the spring. Everyone's in the grass. You have to remember, everyone was wearing black armbands. I had just spoken at a local school there, a high school or one of the schools, and I was sent out by the United States Army. I remember getting out of the car. I had my wife with me. I had bandages all around my chest, and I had my uniform jacket on, and I put my beret on. I was real proud.
Still wounded.
And I walked through the crowd, and some people had their comments, and that's to be expected. And all these stories about people throwing stuff and spitting on veterans, some of them I feel over time are revisionist, and they've added to these stories. But, I had to rip somebody's heart out. They go and they spit on me. You got to be kidding me. Even with one arm, you're not going to spit on me. And I just wanted to hear my side of the story. I didn't know if I was right or wrong. Let me tell my side of the story. And in Princeton, there was a fella speaking, and he said he was in combat for 30 days. Because he was an enlisted man, he wasn't given food or water for 30 days, and no rifle. And the crowd's all listening to this. And then I started booing. And when I started booing, then the crowd turned on me. So then they invited me up to the microphone, and I said, look, it's a smart audience here. Had I not been in uniform, I'm the same age as many people here in the audience, and had I not been in uniform, I may be here. Okay, however, let me tell you this. You can't live in the United States of America for 30 days without any food or water. And in Vietnam, 30 days without food or water or a rifle, forget it. You can't live. The only thing true about this gentleman who went before me is the yellow streak up his back. Well, that drew some emotions from the crowd. So I just told what I felt was right. Were we making some mistakes? Yes. Were we doing some things wrong? Yes. We're doing a lot of things right? Yes. But no one spoke about the right things. And then people started exaggerating an awful lot. And that distressed me because there was a lot of the exaggeration. You could check a guy's background, never saw a day of combat, but yet he would be talking all these horror stories. But that was the only way that the Vietnam veteran returning to America could get attention, is if he told a horror story. And then people would listen to him, say, oh, gee, we feel so sorry for you. Don't feel sorry for me. That's not the wrong way to go about it. Wow. So we tried to make a generation of sorry people. It didn't work. America was so confused. I mean, for the first time, you had fathers and sons fighting over what is patriotism. You had brothers and sisters fighting. What is patriotism? For the first time since the Civil War. And it was confusing. Families were broken up, emotionally, physically broken up over the Vietnam War.
Did you know these people personally? Did you see it? Did you feel it?
Oh, I knew them. I knew my friends. Remember, when you sit for years in classrooms and you're in a parochial type community where you stay relatively close, you're there because it's either your township, if it's a public school, or if it's a Catholic school, you're there because it's your parish. You go through school all these years together, and then you grow up. Some go off to war, some stay home. When you meet again, that meeting where you met originally in the hallways of the different schools when you were a little boy and little girl, when you were protecting your head from the atomic bomb, when you meet that same little boy or little girl, you had an affinity. You had a love and a respect for. And all of a sudden there's a distance because you served in Vietnam. And that hurt. That hurt a whole lot. And even those that were against the war, somehow they confused the war and the warrior. And they became somewhat against the warrior. And that's my resentment to them. And it's strong. And I'll take them on. I'll take them on strongly on it too. It was wrong, and they hurt us. And there were a lot of Vietnam veterans hurt because nobody thought about the returning veteran. It was war, peace, and unfortunately, we were instruments, gears in the machinery of war.
Yep.
And we were expendable.
Yep.
And to this day, during the 60s when it was vogue to take a black to lunch, during the 60s when the women's movement was just starting, during the 60s when the Hispanics and brown power were starting, during all the movements, our movement, who wanted to take a Vietnam veteran to lunch? If you have a real expensive piece of equipment, maybe you'll hire a black, maybe you'll hire a Hispanic, maybe you'll hire a woman, maybe you'll hire an Eskimo. You're not about to give that expensive piece of equipment to a Vietnam veteran that the media has portrayed as psychotic, neurotic, explosive, temperamental. So what happened, that's why the Vietnam veterans started distancing themselves. Where they used to hug Miss Molly, little Molly in the hallways of school, they put that distance in there, that wedge in there. Their only peace, their only solace was in themselves. Their only peace, their only solace. The substance abuse that the Vietnam veterans experienced was acute back here in America, not in the war zone. They may have been introduced to different substances overseas, but the abuse of it was back here because they could escape, they could hide. Their rates of alcoholism, their rates of marital breakup, all those things are much more dramatic than any other segment of society. The rates of unemployment, even to this day. I respected every protester that stood out there on the street and said, we want this to happen. I respected Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali, because he did it within the system. The guys who went to Canada, I don't respect them at all because they didn't help the system. They didn't change the system. They didn't point out to the gutless, spineless politicians, you shouldn't go with the flow. Something's wrong here. Let's fix it.
Talk to me.
So the people, those protesters, I had a lot of respect for them because they were pointing out. They were saying either fish or cut bait. They were saying the same thing I was saying in a different way. They wanted the same end result as a soldier. Soldier wanted peace. They wanted peace. We both wanted peace. I saw them drawing out the war, but I respected what they were doing. To this day, I'll sit down and chat in a room, and people know where I stand, and I know where they stand. I have to respect them for standing up for their cause, and that's what America's all about.
True.
And that's what they taught us in the 60s and the 50s, and those folks from the 40s planted in our head, that we can. If it's on our mind, if it's in our heart, it's in our soul, we can talk about it. We don't have to always agree. And that's one great thing that came out of the 60 generation, is that we can agree to disagree. And that's a wonderful thing. I think before that, everyone tried. And that's why the politicians who were in power were all trying to agree. They couldn't make a decision. I think the protesters and those that were serving in uniform would all be proud, not as though they would like them, but be proud of a politician who would make a stand on an issue. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. One day they're bombing, next day they're not bombing, one day they're doing this. Come on. You're either going to do it or not do it. It's like being almost pregnant. You can't be almost pregnant. Something, when something happens, it happens. And in war was happening. So I respected those guys in the sense that they were doing what they believed in. The folks who ran away to Canada didn't do anything for America, the United States of America. They didn't do anything for the brothers or the sisters. They didn't highlight an issue. And as far as I'm concerned, they're gutless.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything for me.
Rodents.
Or my brothers or sisters.
Rodents.
Was that the most divisive then, or the worst legacy of the Vietnam War, was the splitting of your own generation? Was that worse than splitting with the politicians in the older generation?
Well, it hurt. The splitting of a generation, children you grew up with, your friends that you made your first Holy Communion with, that you did little things with in life. You made your bar mitzvah with, whatever it was. All of a sudden there's a change. And that change is something that you couldn't put your finger on it. It was painful. You would like everything to be the way they were in the early 60s and the late 50s. You would like every woman to be there at home and every man to have a job. But things were changing. And we didn't know how to identify those changes. It was probably the most painful thing was the separation of generations. But what happened was the anti-everything group, and I have to tell you they're anti-everything as far as I'm concerned. They were also anti-Vietnam veterans. And by being anti-Vietnam veterans, that really, really hurt us. Because that really split up the gal you made your first communion with or the guy you made your bar mitzvah with. That was the cutting point when they turned on us. And that group, the people that were speaking for peace, never picked up a banner and said, we want to help you guys get a job.
Cowards.
We want to march to Washington for a job for you guys.
Cowards.
Maybe you did something that we didn't like, but it wasn't your fault. You were in your teens, you graduated from high school, you didn't really know the depth of it.
Nope.
And I just feel that was a separation in society. Can I talk and chat with those people? Yes. Can I play intellectual and mental gymnastics with those people? Yes. No one wants peace more so than someone who's seen war, and I can explain that to them as best I see fit. But if you're going to engage in a war, I'll tell you how to do it and how to finish it real quick. And I don't ever see another protracted war that America's going to get into. And I think the peace people made...
If he only knew at the time.
And made it very clear. And as
there would be more.
There's a lot of understanding about the national politics of the world today and about each other.
I was going to ask.
Now, that was prophetic. He said, I couldn't see America ever getting into anything like that ever again, which this was taped years ago. And of course, America did in other wars where they just pussyfooted around for these backdoor political things that were going on, not known to American citizens. And most of you might know what was going on in that. So America had learned nothing after Vietnam. And this hero was stating, well, we probably learned enough that it would never happen again in America. It happened 2 or 3 more times on extended years of us being in certain places, whatever, in whatever capacity. And if you're going to go to war, go to win. I mean, our politicians and leaders were just manipulating these soldiers in war, and the media was spewing it to the citizens, and it was a joke. It was a complete joke. World War II, we have an enemy, we dropped a bomb, boom, that's it. Sorry, people died, but that's war. That's war. And he made a statement saying, well, it might not. Well, it happened many times with our Bush League presidents and leaders and everything else. So that Vietnam War, these leaders didn't learn nothing.
What good came out of all this? What good came out of Vietnam and the protests and the dissension and splitting up the generation? What good? Was there something good to be had from it all? Or at least is there a good lesson?
Well, I met my wife. My wife was a lot of good to me. My wife is very much against the war. Wonderful person. A lot of good in terms of national politics. It was good in terms of we have to realize that we can't commit boys or girls or anybody to a war until we commit the nation to the war. That has to be the critical thing that came out of Vietnam. You have to be committed before you go. So that's a critical issue. In terms of overall learning process, unfortunately, many people say they love the 60s, but the 60s were just full of negative explosions. There's not a whole lot of good to talk about it. So I love the 60s. Well, what was so wonderful about the 60s?
The music.
The 60s, we had some of the most prominent, wonderful people in the world killed. We had Vietnam. What was so wonderful? You got to smoke grass? What was so wonderful about the 60s? There was a lot of pain. So the good that came out of it is that we got out of the 60s. We're still a nation. I mean, there's an awful lot of hurt, an awful lot of people that look back at the 60s and they think it's romantic. You have to remember, during those types of strain, there's a lot of romanticism because you're doing something unique and different. However, I don't know if that's good. I really don't know if that's good.
As you look back from 1960 to 1973 or 1974, when you encapsulate that whole decade, what stands out to you? What is your impression of those?
what happened is that America will never, ever, ever be the same again as a result of Vietnam. Those little hometowns where the boy was taken away and he sent back broken, either mentally or physically, the little hometown will never be the same just because of that boy. So that happened, and that's real, and that's important. What's sad is that, good or bad, about the 60s, people did not document, read, write, or do anything about the 60s until later on, much, much later than the 60s. You know, it's starting to become acceptable and vogue in the late 80s and early 90s.
Hollywood.
But the 60s weren't documented.
Hollywood.
I was very upset. My children, when they went to school, in most of their textbooks, my oldest daughter, in her textbooks, there wasn't a paragraph about America's longest and most costly war. It brought blood to the streets of America in demonstrations as well as blood in foreign soil. There was nothing written there. So what bad can come out of that time is that we don't document and study it. What's happening 20 years after is that people are now studying. People are now reading. People are now finding out about the 60s. And what happened in the 60s was a lot of bad things. So let us not deceive the youth of today by saying the 60s was just all wonderful. It was romantic in the sense that there were major strains and you were glad to get through them. But there was a lot of pain going through those strains. Who can tell me it was joyous to see RFK, Martin Luther King, JFK killed? What's joyous about that? Who can tell me the Vietnam War with 58,000 men killed, 303,000 injured, and 2,700 missing in action is joyous? There's a lot of bad, a lot of pain. What good can come out of that is if we document it, we read about it, we study it, and we can make sure it doesn't repeat itself.
It repeated itself.
Just like we did with World War II and the 40s. Let us study and review the 60s to see what we today can make good and learn from the mistakes. And there were a lot of mistakes in the 60s. And that's what good can come out of it.
We talked about the Vietnam War really splitting the country. People arguing about patriotism. What is patriotism?
Mm-hmm.
What does patriotism mean to you?
It means being able to stand up and speak out on an issue. Patriotism means that if I disagree with the President of the United States on an issue, that I can speak out about that and I'll fight for that cause.
Yeah,
I'll
without
fight
censorship.
For someone to speak out.
Without
On an
censorship.
issue. I've been fired by
Freedom of speech.
one president. I've turned down jobs by two other presidents. If I was in a country, a communist country, could I do that? Could the peace protesters exist in China as they existed here in America? That's patriotism.
True.
I feel that I fought for the right for them to demonstrate. I feel that I fought for the right for myself to speak out. That's patriotism. Patriotism is the love of a country that has freedom. That if I want to work, I can work. That if I don't want to work, I don't have to work. I mean, it's all me. Just having that freedom. If I want to go fishing, I go fishing. I may lose a job, but that's patriotism. And that's what I have, that freedom to choose what I want to do.
Smart man.
That's patriotism,
Does it mean my country right or wrong?
That would be an abuse of patriotism. If someone were to say, I remember in college, and I'm very, very patriotic, and they had this poll they were sending around, and people were saying, you were checking off different things about Vietnam and whatever, and someone said, my country right or wrong, you have to say, check that off if you're patriotic. And I got upset. I said, I'm extremely patriotic, but I should be one of the first people to say no when it's my country wrong.
Right.
If my country wrong, that's patriotic to say it's wrong. And if it's wrong, let's say it's wrong.
College is
Vietnam
trying to
today,
tell
with
you.
Monday morning quarterback and say it's wrong. I mean, the whole handling of it, everything was wrong. Back then, no one knew. Let's face reality. If they knew, Walter Cronkite wouldn't have been indecisive and everybody else. So I can point out that, my country wrong, by being able to point that out, that's being patriotic. By my country right is also being patriotic, but
It's
we
almost
take that
over.
for granted. Saying it's wrong is patriotic.
Yeah, there you go.
You have to realize no one ever wins a medal in anything by themselves. When you're children, you win medals in sports with your parents, and in battle, you win medals mainly with your team, your unit, whatever. This medal here represents an organization of people with the first or second highest medal in the United States for valor. The Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Navy Cross, and Air Force Cross.
Wow.
This is the nation's second highest medal for valor.
Yeah.
On the battlefield, there are only 800 given out of 2.5 million men to 3 million men. This is the nation's third highest medal. It's a Silver Star.
Great man.
And as my son picks it up and reads his father's name on the back or gives it to his grandson, I felt that I served my nation heroically. The Air Medal was for 25 combat assaults into a hot landing zone, and then we jumped out of a helicopter with people shooting at us, and the helicopter left us there. So we had to run at the enemy, firing away and blazing away. It brings back, in terms of recollections, some of the highest form of gallantry that one could ever see, not for myself, because one doesn't see their own gallantry, but for the fellows beside me. They were from Brooklyn, they were from San Francisco, they were from South Jersey and Utah and Idaho and South Carolina and Texas, and Hispanic and Italian and Irish and Polish. That's what the medals indicate to me. A bunch of guys came together, and if America could capture on just, a bite and see that little picture of their sons, America could never disown those sons. How hard they fought, how gallantly they fought. What it also tells me is that the American fighting man in Vietnam saw more combat than any other fighting man in the history of warfare, with the advent of the helicopter here. Because traditionally, men, if you look back, Pearl Harbor was 2 hours. And those men are held in a great deal of reverence that were through those 2 hours. If you were injured there, the war was over for you during those 2 hours. Gettysburg, 3 days, 3.5 days. And those people were held in heroics for the rest of their lives. What I see with this, I hang in my office for my son to see. And there's not a lot of heroics.
Real patriot, real man, real human being.
There's not a lot of hours. This is
They spit on him when they got back, these people.
just something I can share historically. Something meaningful. That's about it. What should be and could be isn't, so I can't complain about that. So I remember I met Joe Namath. He came to the hospital, and he was a football hero, and he just won the Super Bowl. And as he walked through the hospital, he signed different things, and all I had was bandages, and I was dying. And I didn't like him because he had bell bottoms on. I didn't know him. They said, "Here's Broadway Joe," and I said, "Who's this guy?" And I wasn't part of it. When you're not part of it, you feel disenfranchised, you feel hurt, you feel denied. Then when you come back in and you try to plug in, you're always playing catch up in the employment scene, you're playing catch up in the education scene. You think it feels good sitting in a classroom. And I remember my first English class that I had taken. They want you to write what you did last summer. Well, I was only 20 years old. And I wrote that I was a captain in the United States Army, that I had fought in 4 different countries, that I was a Green Beret, and all these things. And I remember getting an F on paper.
Wow.
And the professor said, He wanted facts, not fiction.
Scum.
And so then I wrote a paper about Wildwood, New Jersey, and got an A on it.
See, there you go, right there. Universities and academia and colleges all had the same protocol from the political leaders and the elitists and everything else. And they didn't recognize a guy like this. He should have been put up on a pedestal. He told about his experience. He was asked to write a paper about his experience last summer, where he was a Green Beret in the Vietnam War, a hero, to say the least. And this scum professor, who's been probably entitled his whole life, gives him an F. That's the world of academia sometimes in our country. Political. Colleges are also political.
So I realized that life's just a game, and they weren't ready for, they just weren't ready for the returning veterans. And what I did is I tried to energize the veterans, because they said that we can't make a change, we can't make a difference. And there was a cadre of veterans that we got together. And some of them didn't think the way I thought. I mean, there was John Kerry from Vietnam Veterans Against the War, who's now a U.S. Senator. There was Bobby Mueller from the same group. I was very much in the thought process that we could win the war. So I disagreed with them politically. But I felt that we had a common denominator. We were veterans. We could come together and we could serve veterans and take care of their needs. I didn't believe what I did in Vietnam was wrong. And I know for a fact the majority of people that served in Vietnam did not kill women and children. We fought against the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. The Viet Cong, for the most part, were very weak. We would have kicked their tails to here and to hell and back. They wouldn't stand and fight like men. The North Vietnamese soldiers were good soldiers, and they fought like soldiers. The Americans, this was the best trained army America ever sent off to war. Do you realize in World War II they were practicing with wood weapons before they hit the shores? In America, we were trained. We got there and we were well trained. So I just feel, looking back, we can always say a lot could be done, should be done, will be done. But I did a lot. And in joining up with that cadre and joining up with Jan Scruggs, a kid who helped with the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., joining up with all these people, we ended up, the veterans themselves, whether they were for the war or against the war, we did our own Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We did our own Vietnam Veterans Memorial. We authored our own legislation into law for Agent Orange. We did everything by ourselves. I remember an old man saying to me, son, don't expect us to do it for you. If you want power, if you want the reins of power, you've got to pry finger by finger off those reins, because we're not going to give you power. You've got to fight for it. So we fought for it back here, and we fought gallantly, and we won. But we had a lot of losses along the way. We lost a lot of people. When I go to the memorial, or any memorial, and I've helped a lot of memorials throughout the nation, it's not to glorify war. It's to remember and reflect. On the heroics, yes. On those that died, yes. And also to reflect, just as they have memorials to those that died in the Holocaust in World War II. It's so that generations after us can reflect and say, let us not make the same mistake. Let us never let this happen again.
It happened
Hopefully
again.
they'll understand. Can you say there's never going to be another war? No. Let us not be that naive.
Right.
But if there is another war, let us do it differently.
We didn't. Politics.
War is violent. Americans knew that. They've been through World War II. They've been through Korea. Why were they so unprepared to deal with the reality of war? Well, they changed in society that they weren't willing to accept.
Politics and war don't mix.
They dealt with the reality of war. Americans, we were very, very gallant. We didn't lose one battle, contrary to popular opinion. We beat the enemy time in and time out. We beat the enemy in the Tet Offensive. We were very aggressive on the battlefield. The 101st Airborne, the 173rd Airborne, 1st Infantry Division, 1st Cav, 11th Armored Cav, the Marines, everybody fought gallantly. We weren't timid in terms of fighting the war. We fought the war we were trying to fight to win. We could only fight to a certain area, and then we had to stop and play defense. When you do that, you're going to lose. You'll lose a soccer game, you'll lose a football game, you'll lose anything if you're just going to be in defense in a competitive situation. What happened when we returned, that was the difference between Korea, Vietnam, World War I, all your other wars, including the Civil War, that divided brother and father and mother and son. The difference with Vietnam from all those other wars was the returning process. You know, I went to a university, and because I laugh and smile and joke, because I don't share my tears with anybody unless I care, they didn't believe I was a disabled veteran. And I was asked to disrobe before the faculty, take my clothes off, before an admissions faculty of a prestigious law school in the United States of America. And a man took a pencil and stuck it in a bullet hole in my back. And he told me he'd shot deer more severely, or less severely than me, and they had died. So you tell me what was the difference between a returning veteran in World War II and a returning veteran in Vietnam. After World War II, you could not get elected to the United States Congress or Senate or the White House unless you served in uniform. After Vietnam. All right.
I don't mean to disrespect this great veteran and American hero, but I got 3 minutes left on my battery, and I hung in there. He did that war for him. I could do a video like this. My arms are sore. I'm sweating and everything else. And he covers a lot of different things. And you see the political things that were going on. You could only go so far in battle. And then the commanding officers would say, stop, really stop. We're here to win. We're not here to just get in these battles and then withdraw and then wait till we're shot on. We got to wait to get shot upon, and then we could fight. You go to war to fight, and I like the way he covered politically and academically in America at the time at these universities and these Ivy Leaguers and all that sat in their mansions talking smack. They controlled the media and everything, and they want to make their own narrative. You got guys like this, true American heroes, that had to suffer from it. I do love our country and everything else. And he said, let's not make the same mistakes again. But we did. So what's to be said? Whoever you're voting for, we have elections coming up soon in America, and vote for who you think is best for our country. These guys fought for that right. So, you know, our country is in a real turbulent time on every level and everything else. People don't like it. Go vote for someone new. I'm not going to do too much political stuff on here because it might get censored and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to stay within my lane. And so that's that. I got to do a Jesus calling. It's been a while. Trust me in the midst of a messy day. Your inner calm, your peace in my presence need not be shaken about what is going on around you. Though you live in a temporal world, your innermost being is rooted in eternity. When you start to feel distressed, detach yourself from the disturbances around you. Instead of desperately striving of maintaining order and control in your little world, relax and remember the circumstances that cannot ruin your peace. Seek my face and share my mind with you. Open your eyes to see my perspective. Don't let your heart be troubled, and don't be afraid. The peace I give you is sufficient. So thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Sorry to butcher that, God, but there's a little message in there, and I'm running. I think I got 1 minute left. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, my viewers. I appreciate your support. I think I got 60-some subscribers. God bless y'all, and be the kings and queens of your world. Stay great. Stay strong. Don't ever give up. Blue skies are coming. God bless you. I'll talk to you soon.